Soon, you may hear the voice of someone you love begging for help on the phone, and it may not be real. This is no longer science fiction. The synthetic era has already begun. Every image can now be fabricated. Every voice can be cloned. Every conversation can be simulated. And for the first time in human history, seeing is no longer believing. Most people still do not fully understand what this means. They think the danger is misinformation. It is much deeper than that. The real danger is the collapse of trust itself. Because once reality becomes difficult to verify, fear replaces certainty, confusion replaces clarity, and manipulation becomes effortless. One fake video can destroy a reputation. One cloned voice can empty a bank account. One manipulated image can trigger panic across millions of people within minutes. And somewhere in the near future, many people will receive a message that feels completely real. The voice will sound real. The emotion will sound real. The panic will feel real. But it will not be real. That is how synthetic reality begins reshaping human psychology. Quietly, personally, emotionally. And maybe a part of this already feels familiar. The strange uncertainty of modern information. The feeling that everything online is becoming harder to trust. The exhaustion of constantly questioning what is authentic. The quiet realization that the internet no longer feels fully human. This is the beginning of a new era, not only technological, psychological. The most dangerous part of synthetic reality is not that machines can imitate humans. It is that humans are slowly losing the ability to recognize what is real. This is why the modern world feels increasingly unstable. Not because information disappeared, but because truth became difficult to prove. For generations, trust was built through physical presence, a signature, a face, a voice, a document. But artificial intelligence is eroding those foundations faster than most people realize. The old systems were never designed for synthetic reality. And now the cracks are appearing everywhere. Accounts are compromised. Identities are replicated. Personal data is harvested endlessly. Digital footprints are traded like commodities. And most people continue moving through this new world with almost no protection at all. This is the age of digital exposure, the age where your identity can become more valuable to strangers than to yourself. That is why a new philosophy must emerge. Not paranoia, not fear. Digital sovereignty, the understanding that your identity, your data, your assets, and your attention can no longer depend entirely on centralized systems built for a previous era. This is where the obsidian monolith rises, not as fantasy, not as mythology, but as a symbol of stable truth inside unstable systems. The monolith does not ask for blind trust. It demands verification, proof, ownership, integrity, because appearances can now be manufactured infinitely. A face is no longer proof. A voice is no longer proof. Even video itself is no longer proof. Verification is the new trust. That is the first principle of digital sovereignty. Trust must evolve from appearance to verification. The old internet was built around visibility. The new era will be built around authenticity, proof of identity, proof of ownership, proof of origin, proof of integrity. Without systems of verification, synthetic reality eventually consumes trust completely. This is why encryption matters, not because it is mysterious, but because encryption creates boundaries, and boundaries protect freedom. Most people think privacy is about hiding, It is not. Privacy is the ability to choose what belongs to you. Your conversations, your memories, your financial life, your personal data, your digital identity. Without protection, these become resources harvested by systems you do not control. Most people protect their money more carefully than their minds. That imbalance is becoming dangerous because attention is now infrastructure. Perception is now attack surface. Every click trains the machine. Every reaction feeds the algorithm. Every moment of unconscious consumption strengthens systems designed to capture more of your attention tomorrow. Most people believe they are using technology. In reality, technology is training their behavior continuously. And if you have ever opened your phone for just a minute, then somehow lost an hour, you have already experienced how subtle that conditioning can become. This is why clarity becomes a survival skill, not only financially, psychologically, emotionally, cognitively, because people who cannot distinguish signal from manipulation eventually lose control over their direction. The distracted become programmable. The sovereign become difficult to manipulate. That is the second principle of the obsidian monolith. Protect your attention as aggressively as you protect your money. The modern digital world profits from overstimulation, infinite scrolling, infinite outrage, infinite stimulation, infinite emotional triggering, and artificial intelligence accelerates this process dramatically. Algorithms already understand human attention better than most humans understand themselves. They know what creates outrage, what triggers fear, what weakens focus, what keeps people emotionally reactive. And emotionally reactive people are easier to predict, easier to influence, easier to control. This is why intentional systems matter. Intentional information, intentional media consumption, intentional digital boundaries, intentional ownership. Without structure, the modern world slowly fragments human identity into data points optimized for prediction and influence. Most people do not notice this fragmentation happening. It feels normal. Checking notifications every few minutes, scrolling unconsciously late into the night, consuming outrage as entertainment, absorbing endless noise until independent thought becomes difficult. And eventually, the mind becomes crowded with so much stimulation that silence itself feels uncomfortable. That is the hidden cost of synthetic reality. Not only false information, fragmented consciousness. There was a time when silence created reflection. Now, silence feels unfamiliar to many people because the modern world trained them to fear stillness. Noise became emotional anesthesia. Distraction became addiction. And overstimulation became the perfect mechanism for preventing deep thought. The obsidian monolith stands against this fragmentation. Still, precise, unaffected by chaos. Not because it rejects technology, but because it refuses Unbud's unconscious dependence on it. This is where sovereignty becomes internal, not merely technological, psychological. A stable center inside an unstable digital civilization. Because true sovereignty is not only about encrypted systems, it is about disciplined perception, calm thinking, strategic awareness, and emotional regulation in environments specifically designed to destroy focus. Most people are overwhelmed because they absorb too much unfiltered input, too much outrage, too much stimulation, too much emotional programming, and eventually, they lose the ability to think independently. That is why calm people increasingly appear powerful. Not because they know everything, but because they are not drowning in uncontrolled input. Clarity is becoming a competitive advantage. Stillness is becoming resistance. And disciplined perception is becoming a form of modern armor. This is the third principle of digital sovereignty. Do not outsource your perception completely to machines. Artificial intelligence is powerful, but power without ethics creates instability. Power without verification creates danger. Power without boundaries eventually consumes trust itself. The answer is not rejecting technology. The answer is building stronger architecture around it. Verification systems, personal ownership systems, encrypted identity systems, independent knowledge systems, human judgment reinforced by intelligent tools instead of replaced by them. That is the path forward. Not fear, not blind optimism. Strategic adaptation. Because the synthetic era is already here. The deepfakes will improve. The simulations will improve. The manipulations will improve. And the line between real and artificial will continue becoming harder to detect. But your awareness can improve too. Your systems can improve. Your discipline can improve. Your sovereignty can strengthen. And even in a world flooded with synthetic noise, clarity is still possible. Truth is still possible. Independent thought is still possible, but only for people willing to protect their minds from continuous manipulation. And maybe that is the real challenge of the coming era. Not simply learning how to use artificial intelligence, but learning how to remain deeply human while living beside it. This is the final truth of the obsidian monolith. In a world where everything can be fabricated, the rarest form of power becomes verified reality. Not performance, not illusion, not noise. Truth that can withstand scrutiny. Identity that cannot be easily manipulated. Ownership protected by systems instead of promises. And a mind stable enough to remain clear inside the chaos of synthetic civilization. The future will not belong to those who consume the most information. It will belong to those who can still recognize what is real. Because sovereignty is not given. It is protected. It is designed. And in the age of artificial reality, it must be verified. And once you begin protecting your perception this carefully, you start realizing something even deeper. The greatest battle of the modern age may not be for money or technology at all, but for ownership of human attention itself.